Hi, so today I thought I could share some highlights from a conversation I had with a friend, Elizabeth Clements. Elizabeth is a shamanic healer and a mediator and works in social justice. She shares some highlights from the front line, and also we talk a little about how the crisis is pushing shadow to the surface. So I hope this is useful in some way, and thanks for listening.
I'm a social worker. I always think that's like the foundation of who I am. Um, but then I'm also a mediator. So for over 20 years, 23 years, I've been mediating conflict and the community in New York and Brooklyn. Um, and then I'm a shaman. So I've been a shaman for about 12 years, I think. And I'm a restorative justice practitioner, and I founded an organization called Hidden Water, which is a restorative justice response to interfamilial child sexual abuse. Since COVID-19 started, I have been working in a bunch of different capacities, but probably the two biggest ones that I have been on the front lines for is people in deep traumatic breakdown at home because of trauma reactions to having to isolate and feel controlled and feel trapped and be in homes that are not healthy or functioning properly. And so I've been working with a lot of people who are having a resurgence of PTSD. And then I've also, as a shaman, been called on for lots of folks who are losing parents and other loved ones, but mostly I notice elderly parents. And I think probably the biggest thing to remember you just said, which is that you have to address your health physically and emotionally and relationally. And I'll talk about energetic or spiritual in a second, but that's sometimes a little hard for people to understand. But the first three are not hard to understand. And the biggest thing with physical is we have negative coping mechanisms. We have probably neutral coping mechanisms, and then we have coping mechanisms that will add to our life in a positive way. So physically speaking, I notice a really sharp increase in, addiction and engaging in things that are really harming, and not just drugs and alcohol, but, binge watching TV and sleeping all day and, certain things that I've overeating, undereating, eating the wrong things, there's something that has to be addressed around your physical being, which you have to start to break your coping mechanisms into these camps, which I think is really important. And then obviously try to minimize the negative impact coping mechanisms and increase the positive impact or the neutral. Emotionally, we have to manage our emotions. And so, there's, to me, that, I know this is things everyone's been saying, but, minimize the amount of TV you're taking in, because that's a negative emotional reaction. Your fight or flight is going to go off. It just is. And while you want to stay informed, you also need to manage your emotional world and your internal world that way. So, having positive, encounters or soothing your emotions in ways that, make sense to you matters. And, noticing depression and anxiety, because those are the stressors underneath your own, you can get physically ill from those. And then there's the relational, which is you have to have community. Like, we as beings need our community, and we can engage in exchanges that are very negative, and that'll take away from us, or we can find those safe people that can bring us light and that we can give light to, and have these exchanges that actually create a light exchange. And so you maybe, depending on your environment, you have to do a little thinking about what that is, and who those people are, and go out of your way to have those interactions. But the truth is, like, we all came into the COVID-19 virus with our own shadow around what's going to trigger us. And those are heavy, dense energy in our system that may or may not, but from the people that are reaching out to me, of course, the people reaching out to me are struggling, but the people reaching out are getting their shadow pieces kicked up. And so it's both hard and an opportunity to clear it. And so, while lots of traumatic crises are opportunities to evolve also, they're also very difficult. And so, again, it's about self-care, and you can't clear shadow on your own. You can, but mostly you're not clearing shadow on your own, and reaching out to people that will help you address that, look at it. It is actually a great opportunity for evolving and spiritual growth. But like all things like that, crises, they can increase the shadow in your system and you can sink, or they can make it so agitated that you finally look at it and clear it. And I think it's important to remember that, like, not everyone is going to queue up and clear shadow and evolve here. There are lots of people who are going to sink. And I guess part of what I struggle with these days, listening to a lot of spiritual talk about how great it is that this is happening, is I often find myself having to unfortunately enter with and there are people really suffering. um the earth, it's better for the earth, yes, and the people living on the edge are going to go under. And so I always try to remember that there's, like, both things are happening, but that's been happening in this world for almost a decade, where it's like it's getting darker and lighter at the same time. Absolutely. Amplifying it. And for some who are clearing and evolving and shifting in positive ways, there are just as many taking on more and sinking and really struggling. And so I do think it's a reminder also to be humble. If you happen to be someone with resources, and not just physical and emotional resources, but also spiritual resources, um, you know, send light to those who don't. And that this should be an opportunity to step out of self-absorption and stop imagining that your spiritual unfolding is something that you do alone. It's something that you do by helping others. But the earth since 2012, I think, has really been shifting, and the consciousness is evolving, and we're moving from the masculine to the feminine. And I think this is part of it. And moving from the masculine, which is a hierarchy and about who's got the most power, to the feminine, which is the circle, which is equality of power, and voices, and that the wisdom comes from the community, not from the experts. I think that this, latest crises is just another step on the path to the feminine. That in the end, we're going to live in smaller communities again. We're going to do as much listening as we are talking, or more so. And that we're going to listen. I think we're going to inevitably be pushed into setting up community in circle, and that, I mean that, metaphorically as well as actually. And that the underlying foundation of circle is equality. And so everyone has, a right to speak the truth, their subjective truth, into the space, and have it honored. And the expectation that you listen deeply and let yourself be influenced by others, is how we create these communities that evolve. The wisdom will come from the earth or from the spirit world or from wherever it's going to come, but you have to create the portal. And to me, these days, the portal isn't through the shaman or the healer or whoever, the mystic or the, medium or whatever. It's actually from the circle. You listen deeply to the community and we'll figure it out. And so when it all shakes out, I think that the way we're going to survive is by going back into more of an indigenous structure, living more locally, listening more deeply to dissenting views within our face-to-face community. I've never been very upset about, global warming, because I've always thought the earth can take care of herself. That's not going to be the problem. The problem is going to be, we're not going to be able to survive on the earth once she kicks us off. And, this is certainly an example. I mean, and we've had many examples before this, I think, where the earth is shifting in ways that will not make it easily inhabitable for us, or at least not at the population that we are now. Um, so has the time come for the earth to care for herself and make shifts? Yeah, it has. And the question is, what are the shifts that we're going to make in order to continue to stay here? No, now it's, it's like being forced upon us in a way that I think is good. The air is clearing, the earth is quieting down, the oil is being drilled out of the earth at a far, fewer barrels per day or whatever. And, there's a million examples. Um, yeah, it's time. It's just time. Really, you really see that it's pushing people to this brink where they need nature. They're just desperate to be feet on the ground. And we started feeding birds, which we never done before, and just like fascinated by them coming. We started doing bonsai with these little trees we had, and it's like, yeah, even my teenage kids are like coming back down to the earth. And I think that, in this way, it creates a crisis, but it pushes us through a wall of fire to the other side too.